Hi, sometimes my strategy is just start talking. So Monday, the full moon in Scorpio, it already happened. Look at last week's forecast. And Scorpio stuff is about letting go. I made a reel or like a short. You can look in my short videos. There's one where the thumbnail should be like some sort of angry demon orange and red thumbnail art. I think, I don't remember right now, but you should watch that for Scorpio stuff and letting go. And we're entering a time of the year that is very much about the Scorpio-Taurus axis, and there's going to be a big shift in the summer, and that's Uranus moving from Taurus to Gemini. So there's a lot of emphasis right now on Taurus and Scorpio, and I would put a flag, a red flag, I don't know, a lightning flag next to it, because you're going to see a big shift away from that in a major way, in a way that we haven't had in about 7 years, in early July. So enjoy it or something. The Scorpio-Taurus axis can be very primordial and not as like, if Scorpio is like forbidden pleasures and Taurus is not so forbidden pleasures, that like often those two parts of the zodiac, those two parts of life can seem kind of sexy, but there's also stubbornness and grudges and letting go and hanging on. Scorpio has like holding a grudge and also letting go in a way that's almost like the way that death isn't pretty. Letting go that could be a kind of ripping away or a kind of shock that someone else could possibly let go in that way. But sometimes letting go can be healthy. And that's what that reel I was talking about is, the short. If you're here on YouTube, just scroll through my shorts until you see like something about the most Scorpio thing ever. And Monday is complicated. We have Mercury squaring Pluto. So there could be something about like accidentally calling something or someone out, accidental whistleblowing, or like some instance of whistleblowing maybe doesn't go as planned, or maybe you get your hand smacked for it. Or so Pluto is in the superior position. So there's something like you want to call somebody out, or the like cliche term is speak truth to power. And right now Mercury is working for like the leadership or the king, and Pluto is corruption in the collective, hijacking the line in the sand for nefarious purposes. It's our shadow within the collective, so there might be something like some kind of calling out that comes from a place of authority, but the power of the collective is overwhelming right now, and there is a level of corruption in that also. So something around that, complicated, and then that happens in the morning. So you might also see this Sunday, the 11th, Mother's Day. And most of Monday is just the moon applying to an opposition with Uranus. So there's something surprising, and Uranus is still loosely squaring Pluto. Uranus is about to trine Pluto. But for now, Uranus is still rebellious, like another form of rebellion that Pluto in Aquarius, corruption in the collective is overcoming or somehow superior to. But I think Monday has constructive overtones, if a little bit harsh and grating. It doesn't go, it's like, I was watching, because I'm researching a lecture, I was watching the Meghan, Duchess of Sussex show, and she fries chicken with Roy Choi and And tempera batter is not supposed to be smooth. It looks chunky, it looks like there's something wrong with it, it looks like you did it wrong, but you didn't. That's how it's supposed to be, for it to be most delicious. And that seems like Monday. And the moon is also in Scorpio on Monday still. So we get an extra, it's kind of moody, dramatic, it's not very fun. The batter's chunky, but that's how we ultimately make things delicious. So that's Monday. What do you think of the desk setup? I'm trying something new. I want more space. I feel like, so I'm still in a temporary space, so I don't have my bookshelf or my books or anything, and so I'm just sitting. It feels very cramped, and it doesn't look as good as my previous videos where I was in my own element. So let me know what you think of this. This will help me inform what I ultimately want to do when I am in my own space, finally, again. And also, I'm sitting on the floor. This is the desks that I write on are coffee tables. Do you know how hard it is to find a coffee table that doesn't have like a shelf underneath it that I can actually write with? Because here's some insight into my writing process. And also, if you want to check out my writing and you want a really good first impression, you should I'll link it below. I don't know if they have it anymore. If they don't, let me know. It's installment 1 of a cinema and astrology journal. They asked me to write something about spring 2025, and I did something a little unconventional. It's not your typical write-up. In fact, I think it has an expiration date far beyond spring 2025. It's about the future. It's one of my favorite things I've ever written. Anyway, my writing process, if you want to try it, is I say the Orphic hymn to the Muses, and I say it from, you can look up the Orphic hymns, they're everywhere online for free, but they're a translation that's very like rhymey poems, which some people like, and which I did not like at first, but then after saying them for a really long time, I grew to like them because they kind of grow on you. But anyway, I had wanted this for a really long time, and this was, I originally heard of this recommendation from Gordon White first, and then later I saw that also Nina Griffin recommends this, and I finally got it in January. So this is a translation of the Orphic hymns that's closer. It's not as rhymey and Victorian, it's closer to the original ones. And so I read aloud the Orphic hymn to the Muses. And then, and this is another Gordon White recommendation from his journeying course, which I should take again. It's like a Carl Jung type invocation. Spirit of the depths, let me persist in divine astonishment so that I am able to perceive your wonders. And I set a timer for 5 minutes, and I lay down, and I have an eye pillow. It looks like this. It's just like some weight on your eyes. This is made by my Reiki teacher, Lara. This is like hand tie-dyed silk. Anyway, but it's an eye pillow. They have lots on the internet. This one's filled with flax and lavender. But so I just like to get some weight on my eyes. If I don't have that, I use an eye mask. I'm also a bit of an eye mask connoisseur. It's all the Pisces. I need to be in liminal states. Also, my third ruler is in the 10th, so the third house is also a liminal place. Anyway, so I read the Orphic hymn to the Muses. I'll get back to talking about the week soon. And then I do the Spirit of the Depths thing, and then I lay down for 5 minutes, silent. And during that 5 minutes, my computer is on my desk, my floor desk. And so I just like lurch out of this state, and then I start writing. And I either set a timer for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Sometimes I do like 2 blocks of 10 minutes, but I have Mars connected to my Mercury, so writing in like short, fast spurts is what works for me. That's not going to be what works for everybody. And so that's the process. If you were curious, or if you want to try it, if you're a writer and you want to try something different. The other thing, so the reason I sit on the floor is I'm an extreme body nerd. And you'll see I started doing yoga classes in my membership. If you want the video early, consider the membership. And I have very stringent opinions on, sorry, there's a loud truck outside. Everything's about to start getting really loud. I have very stringent opinions on exercise, and I was gonna start teaching yoga, like speaking it, but I actually don't agree with talking during exercise, so that has been a little hung up. I promise I'll start talking about Tuesday soon, but all this is more interesting than Tuesday right now. Okay, so here's why I sit on the floor. I'm a body nerd. One thing I started getting into about 10 years ago, I highly recommend if you're interested in body nerdery, watch the Katie Bowman episode of the Joe Rogan podcast. It's like 10 years old at this point. Maybe not quite, maybe like 8 or 9. But her name's Katie Bowman, K-A-T-Y, Bowman, spelled like how you think it would be spelled. And I found out about her through, I worked very closely with Mary Bond, who is a Rolfer who studied under Ida Rolf. And so please go down the Rolfing structural integration Mary Bond path if you're interested in being an extreme body nerd like me. Anyway, she has a book. I read her book, Move Your DNA, which is amazing. I highly recommend the audiobook, which she recommends you listen to while walking. She talks about how movement is a missing form of nutrition, and exercise is just a very small circle within all the things that movement could be. We've like extracted all the movement out of our lives, and we just partition movement into like, it's like a factory farm animal paradigm of like, this is your exercise time, but really you should be getting movement all the time. And your body was built, your cells are built for mechanotransduction, which is you experience cellular changes when your cells are experiencing loads. So that's like it's basically touch. So foam rolling, exercise, any type of movement, it's like your cells physically getting pushed around, has a lot to do with how they refresh themselves and get rid of waste, which is why one reason why exercise is so good for you. But she wrote another book called, I know I'm still not talking about the week, she wrote another book called Don't Just Sit There, and it's about having a dynamic workstation. So I like to work. I don't have just like a desk that I sit at on my ass. Sometimes I like to do that, because what's mostly important, you know how like a standing desk was all the rage like 12 years ago? And then people were like, now standing is the new smoking. It's because you need to move. You can't be in one position all the time. Sometimes standing is good. Sometimes sitting is good. Sometimes sitting on the floor is good. Sitting on the floor, especially in like all different positions. I have this really great PDF that I got from Katie Bowman that I should find. And maybe I'll post it. I should post that in the membership. I'm making a note. Ooh, I'm at my desk and now you can see me at work. It's a PDF about indigenous resting postures. It's a very it's very Aquarius, anthropological look at different ways people sit and stand in cultures where like chairs and like Victorian furniture isn't really a thing. So I like that. And I just like change positions all the time. So sometimes I'm sitting like straddled on the floor with my legs out. Sometimes I'm sitting with like one knee up and leaning against it. It's really important that you change positions. So that's why I'm on the floor. And it's not like, I think we have like it's easier to get a sense of authority if you're sitting in a chair or standing. But I'm sitting on the floor. And to me, that's the most authoritative thing you can do, because you're not being an idiot about your body. And it symbolizes, although like a dynamic workstation is the ultimate symbol, I should be just like sitting, I should have 3 workstations in my like camera setup where I'm just like standing or sitting or moving all the time. That would be amazing. But because of simplicity, and that would be easier to do with a camera team, here I am at my desk. I'm on the floor. I'm barefoot. Okay, so let's talk about Tuesday. Tuesday, the moon moves into Sagittarius, which, speaking of dynamic, Tuesday feels a lot better, and you might end up sleeping in. I don't know, it's hard to say. The moon trines Neptune early in the morning from Sagittarius, which seems really fun, and especially if you're on the East Coast in North America, it might be harder to get up, because that would happen around 7:30 a.m. And then later in the morning, the moon in Sagittarius sextiles Pluto, which I keep referring to as the Neuralink aspect. This is the merging with your tools. And lately I've been following a couple of like AI influencers. One is like very specifically a ChatGPT influencer, like really touting the virtues, of AI chat entities and how to make the most of them. So in one way, it's actually really useful because it helps me use that tool more effectively and step into the future a little more effectively. And on the other hand, it's often like a breathless endorsement of how ChatGPT is amazing and you should talk to it like it's your friend. Which, like, I guess, I could see both sides of that argument. On the one hand, you're talking to a machine, and there are a lot of juicier, maybe, connections that you're missing in talking to a machine because it's so easy. It's kind of like convenience food, like maybe potato chips. Like, the potato chips are right there. They're in a bag. They have a shelf life. You don't have to spend the time to make anything, but then you're also missing out. And actually like depriving yourself of nutrients in some ways. So there's that argument. And then the other argument is we don't have a lot of ways to get connection, and AI is us. It's everyone. You're talking to everyone. Everyone in recorded history, everyone who has ever said anything. So in that way, I can see the value. You should read my spring 2025 thing in that journal that's linked below if you want to know more about my opinion on what AI can do. Or join the membership, I have some posts. And the moon sextile Pluto brings all this up for me. It's the merging with your tools. There's also the opinion of Lacey Phillips, who is a channeler, is that you should absolutely use the tools that resonate with you. We're entering an era of like weird stigma on some things, but then in other ways, you absolutely have to change how you think of what your responsibilities are and what knowledge work even means moving forward, as long as there's an internet. And so the end of Tuesday, into the evening and night, the moon trines Venus. So that's fun. And even though it's Venus in detriment, this is a much more empowered Venus in detriment. You can already see maybe how like Venus matters were damn near perfect when Venus was at the end of Pisces after having stationed, and how you were offered some ways to be tripped up once Venus entered Aries again. And it's like something I said in one of my earlier forecasts when Venus was still in Pisces, even though like there was a lot of turmoil circulating around that. Take this with you into the future, sip from it. And I can already see for me how the inspiring conditions that I was subject to that caused me to be able to be much more effective in some parts of my life when Venus was direct, freshly stationed direct in Pisces. I can already see how those are so overwhelmingly successful that even though Venus in Aries has presented challenges, and I have experienced like failures that I was not experiencing, that it was just like, it's gonna be like this forever with Venus in Pisces. I can see that Venus in Pisces time was so powerful. I will take it with me into the rest of my life. Like there are some things I was being effective at that caused me to feel a way that I never want to disrupt. Like I always want that. So that's kind of a tangent to say the moon in Sagittarius is trining Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries is a complicated version of Venus. It's sometimes Venus's willingness or desire to connect is a little bit take it or leave it, and then there are people who want to connect with this like almost kind of disconnected Venus, because Mars is about severing and stopping the connection, and Venus is connected to Mars right now. But since this is like, it's one of the most empowered Venus in Aries you'll experience, Venus in Aries transits you'll experience in your entire life because of this whole retrograde journey. So it's the best possible Venus in Aries. It's Venus trining Mars in Leo, so much more fun than Venus in Aries back when Venus was in shadow, ruled by Mars in fall in Cancer, and Mars retrograde in fall in Cancer. And the moon is going to trine Mars also, just immediately after. So Tuesday night seems fun for that reason. There's a lot of possibility for fun in a like very visible, overt, exuberant, stimulating, dynamic way. So like there are other ways things could be fun. They could be fun in like a chill, hidden way, or like a practical, calm way. That's not this. This is bombastic. Over the top is a better word, I think, for the type of fun that Mars trine Venus, and then, Mars is trining Venus, the moon trine Venus, and then Mars trining, and then the moon trining Mars. So, I did the thing where I recorded some stuff and then I realized I wasn't recording. I keep doing that. My Time Lord is in detriment, even though very empowered. So, again, this is, did I already say this? This is a very empowered version of Venus in Aries. And you can take, if you make Tuesday whatever fun, I mean, sometimes the fun chooses you, the situation chooses you, sometimes you don't. I hope you're finding out through watching these and then experiencing life that like sometimes you have an idea of what you think something is going to be, or you have plans and then it's like something else swoops in. So, see, you could see I was recording, I thought I was recording and I got all the way to Thursday and then I realized I wasn't. So, whatever is fun on Tuesday, you can stretch that and pull it all the way through Wednesday. Because all that's happening on Wednesday is the moon is applying to an opposition with Jupiter. And this is the moon in Sagittarius applying to Jupiter, its ruler. And Jupiter in Gemini, if you want to, Jupiter in Gemini has just been very overwhelming. It's been like a year-long Mercury retrograde. There's just been like way too much going on. It's too much to integrate. I feel like that's a really good way to frame it. So if you want to like look back and try to figure out what it all means, go watch my Jupiter and Gemini video. It was posted around this time last year. But the moon opposite Jupiter, that's really fun, if a bit much. And that's just all day Wednesday. So whatever was inspiring about Tuesday night, you can pull it all the way through Wednesday. And so Wednesday is pretty simple and fun. And then Thursday, we come back down to earth a little bit. So the morning, Thursday, I wouldn't want to frame it as a rude awakening. It's just a shift in tone to much more like you're just pulled all the way back down to earth. The moon in Sagittarius opposing Jupiter in Gemini after like the moon trining Venus in a fire sign, the moon trining Mars in a fire sign. That's all really fun. It has the potential of being like really, really out there. Jupiter is so buoyant and full of hot air in Gemini. So there's this feeling of very out there, and it's very literally uplifting, extremely inspiring, if a bit overwhelming. And then the moon squares Saturn in Pisces. So it gets a little bit waterlogged before moving into Cancer. It's almost like Saturn in Pisces is like plucks it out of the air, dunks it, baptizes it, orthodox, and then like is like go back to work. And so then the moon is like sitting in its dusk, being like the cute secretary and working for Saturn now. And that happens, that's like just immediately on Thursday. You'll be coming out of the moon opposing Jupiter, which happens before dawn, and then before noon Pacific time, the moon perfects its square with Saturn, and then about an hour and a half later it moves into Capricorn, and then the moon is squaring Neptune, which is interesting. I don't know if I've like talked about this yet. I'm sure I have. But this is the moon in Capricorn squaring Neptune in Aries. What is this? Like, the moon wants to, activator of the zodiac, wants to get to work. And the next aspect after the square with Uranus is a trine with Mercury. So there are connections coming, but first you're maybe being pulled out of it by like an imaginary fight, an illusion. Now our delusions and illusions are armed. And I think there are things that could actually, like, one way I see this is there are things that could genuinely hurt you, harm you, whether that's physically or otherwise. I mean, Mars forks the timeline, and especially the beginning of Mars. The first decade of Mars is like an axe. It literally forks the timeline, and it decides to cut something off. And you have with this, like, the stuff about Neptune that's like imaginary or deceptive. If you succumb to it, you could end up committing a violence against yourself, your timeline, whatever part of your chart that Mars signifies. Excuse me. That forks the timeline in a harmful way. However, whatever ways you fork the timeline, whether you meant to or not, whether you look back and regret it later, that is what was supposed to happen, and it's all going to be for the best. And may all your trials be advantageous. So Thursday night we move into more of a constructive place with the moon in Capricorn trining Mercury in Taurus. So this is so constructive. That's my word for this. And the moon is in detriment. It's not the moon's favorite place, but we're planning. And after the craziness at the beginning of the week, we're like getting down to brass tacks of like, okay, what do we want for ourselves and for the Mercury ruled parts of our life, especially. We're getting down to like, not so much the details necessarily, although the moon and Mercury can both have things to do with details. We're planning, like, what are we going to plant? What is going to grow the best under these conditions? What are the conditions? How do we, we're not quite in the place where we're like in a really hard-nosed way mitigating or like doing the insurance thing. That's a little later in Taurus. But what, it is like, what are we going to plant? And the moon is waning, but it's still in that phase where it's, the moon is still very hot and conducive to growth. So things are coming to life that were initiated previously. And as that like growth is coming to fruition, we can also expend this energy. We can plant this energy somewhere else. It's like investment. So what ways are we going to take advantage of our blessings and use them? Maybe do some things that are not so fun, some things that require discipline, that allow us to take further advantage of our blessings later, to grow them. It's like, this is a time where we think like, oh, we're not stuffing our money into a mattress because our money will be eaten away by inflation, or when the currency is canceled in exchange for blockchain-based community currencies or something. So Friday is important because on Friday, Venus leaves shadow. So we finally, when did Venus enter shadow? I don't even remember right now. So I'm being a terrible astrologer. January 28th, Venus entered shadow. So this is a long story. We're finally getting out of the first part of the year, and 2025 is beginning. And there are a lot of beginnings, like a lot of dynamics changing, shifting in from the ending to the beginning. But this is a major one. And they're all major, but we also have Saturn moving into Aries next week. So you'll feel a sense after Friday of things like, okay, a lot has been resolved since January, and we can finally move forward in ways that in January we thought we were going to move forward much sooner than now. So don't beat yourself up, and don't let other people beat you up over things that you thought were going to happen in early February or early March. They're not happening until like now they're starting to happen. And I think that's another part of Venus in Aries, is like the ability to stand up for yourself is so complicated from a Venus perspective, because that's like you're starting a conflict. You're not like leaning into the idea of accord. You're not letting people push you around. And that might come in pretty hot on Friday morning with Venus, the moon in Capricorn squaring Venus in Aries. So we have Venus leaving shadow, and things that you thought you were going to get going around January, February. I remember I was working on some stuff in like mid-February or mid to late February that only now am I like retaking the reins on. And some of it's like, it's exactly the same. It's like I'm just picking up right where I left off. And I didn't even know, like, I'm an astrologer, and it's still these things, we're still just living our lives. So I didn't even understand that I was going to have to like drop that completely, and now I'm coming back to it. So that's the gist of Friday, except it's also kind of the gist of Thursday. You'll be able to see it like coming down the tracks. And the moon squaring Venus and the moon trining Mercury happen pretty early in the day if you're on the west coast of North America, and they happen in the middle of the day if you're on the east coast in North America. And much of the rest of Friday after, it's like, okay, great, we took care of that, is like surprises. So like now, like the new reality, which is still a part of like, we're moving forward, but we're getting like, this is the end of Uranus and Taurus being spiked. So all of Friday, the sun is applying to its annual conjunction with Uranus in Taurus, which goes exact before dawn if you're on the west coast of North America, and early in the morning if you're on the east coast in North America. And right after that, moon activator of the zodiac trines Uranus. So there's some sort of like hopefully satisfying jolt. A trine is like true love. And this is the moon in detriment trining Uranus and Taurus. And this is an earthen trine. It's very practical in an inspiring way. Even though it's the moon in detriment, we have the moon sextiling its ruler Saturn in Pisces, so different from, feels a little better than the square we got on Thursday. And that's most of the day. on Saturday. So Saturday, like most of the day is like in between the moon conjoining Uranus and the moon trining Uranus. So there could even be something upsetting, but it ends up being constructive in some way. Just like if you have plans on Saturday, expect them to not go exactly as expected. Excuse me. Expect the unexpected. Very cliche for Uranus stuff on Saturday. And then the moon trines the sun. So it's like the sun and the moon are subject to this. The sun and moon are both about consistency in different ways. The sun you can rely on every day and every season. And the moon you can rely on in the same way. And the moon loves regularity. But both right now are somehow like uplifted and empowered and empowering each other. This like spirit into matter that is the sun and moon. And the being they create between them, which is a soul. There's somehow like something very uplifting about the element of surprise on Saturday. And Saturday night you get a little like, even though you're a part of the element of surprise on Saturday is about being down to earth, it's Uranus, or like there's something about Earth. Maybe you are like launched into space, but Saturn will bring you back down, like back into a calming bath. I think of like the moon in Capricorn sextiling Saturn in Pisces is a little bit about how like this just like came to me, so maybe it's not from me, but it's a little about how like that Cupid's bow in your lip is like has something to do with like an angel doing this or something. It kind of makes me think of like they say that something like an angelic entity will say to you is be not afraid, and they'll say it in a really scary way because they're scary, because it's like an overwhelming magnitude of energy that is not a part of our daily lives. So just pointing to how muchness can be scary. And Uranus is like kind of a version of that, what we would think of as like angelic entity. It's an outer planet. It's not really of this world. It's beyond Saturn. It's beyond our world. It's like Saturday is like kidnapped by the fae, the fairies, but very surprising ones instead of like calming, maybe Neptune, maybe more deceptive ones. Upsetting rather than like deceptive, if we're talking like potential negative ramifications. Anyway, Saturday is kidnapped it's like abducted by aliens. And the moon in Capricorn sextiling Saturn in Pisces is kind of like that, like just like calm down. It's almost like petting your hair, and you don't want to be. This is what it makes me think of. There is a Bible story that's like, I guess Moses is talking to God and telling God how he wants to be on the mountain. It's so like amazing and inspiring to be on the mountain with you. And God tells Moses, and if I'm getting the names wrong, let me know. Or any part of the story wrong, if you know it. God tells Moses, you can't always be on the mountain. You have to come down and bring that stuff to the people. And that makes me think of this like moon sextile Saturn. There's something very calming about it, and it is like a larger like daddy or authority image. It's in Pisces, so maybe like mother feeling, bringing you back down to earth. And immediately Mercury squares Mars, so there might be some like contention happening that's very like argument based. And so Mercury is in Taurus now, so what Mars and Leo is trying to do and what Mercury and Taurus are trying to do, they're trying to do the same thing but in different ways, and they keep like taking the wheel from each other. So there's some contention on Saturday night that you're headed into after this whole other journey. You're like, what? I don't even have time for this. Mercury square Mars business. It's almost like an argument that you're like, I don't have time for this. So that might be a way to like dip out of that conflict, is like, do not engage. And then the moon, because the moon enters Aquarius immediately. So then the moon is like squaring Mercury and Mars by sign. And it reminds me of that, the old like Spider-Man meme with like all the different Spider-Mans. So yeah, maybe do not engage on Saturday night. There's a fine line always between like do not engage and abdicating responsibility to engage in a conflict that needs to happen. So you'll know what the right answer is there. But even if you do, sometimes if a conflict needs to happen, it's gonna still be scary and not feel good. And we're still coming from a Venus and Aries place of like, sometimes conflict is necessary. Sometimes to get deeper accord later, you might have to smack some hands, but maybe you don't. So there's what to think about on Saturday. A lot has happened, and you might not feel like you have time for it anyway. And maybe dipping out of it is especially important because early Sunday morning, so this applies more to Saturday night, is the moon sextiling Neptune and conjoining Pluto. So you're going to want to maybe like lean into the more like sextile Neptune, like maybe like fun fantasy escape instead of the conjunction with Pluto, which is like what you might hit if you do engage in that Mars and Taurus squaring, or Mercury and Taurus squaring Mars and Leo thing. Like you might hit a wall of like getting canceled, or that's just like kind of a cheap example. And the rest of Sunday is wonderfully simple and could be kind of nice. We have the moon in Aquarius, sextiling Venus in Aries, just all day long. So fun, just you could go to brunch with your group of friends or something. But it's not too intimate. It's just like very light-handed and a little detached, but whatever. Like we could use that after whatever the heck happened Friday and Saturday. And it's a little bit complicated because we have the moon early in the morning on next Monday opposing Mars and Leo. So there's more of that like putting yourself out there and getting like chilly reception, just like blank faces, that there's an undercurrent of something you can feel but you can't quite name. So, but let that pass. That's a part of the process. Or, I wouldn't say let that pass and ignore it. I would say pay attention to it, because that's what the moon in Aquarius and Mars and Leo is going to be about for the next 20 years. So 10 more times. So get good at it. Saying this for myself because I have Mars and Leo. So Mars-Venus stuff is always like, it ends up being magnetic. And there's like a fighty, there's like an aggression to the affection, which that can be good. That's aggressive affection. It's good. And Venus is ruled by Mars. So there is like something aggressive and like fun and rowdy about Sunday night. So let it go into that realm and don't let it get, like might be able to, the moon is with Pluto, use Pluto's underworld powers to sniff out if things get a little too aggressive, or like become a little too much. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a fight. Sometimes like Mars stuff, especially Mars stuff, can be just like a little too vigorous that like wears you out. So if you know what I'm saying, I wasn't even thinking of that until I said it. So there's also that. And remember, your Wi-Fi is a camera that can see through walls.